Hello, Dahi here from Timeslip Softworks. Welcome to the first video in a short tutorial series covering the use of coroutines in Unity with C#. Now I found some of the existing videos on coroutines were a little difficult to follow when I was learning them. Now, I've probably been using them for around a year now. And this isn't meant as a criticism for the other tutorials, but I just think what can happen is that the presenter can become so familiar with the topic that they can forget that others lack a similar level of familiarity. So I thought it might be useful to make a tutorial series from the perspective of someone who has started using coroutines more recently. Now this tutorial, it isn't intended to be an exhaustive resource on coroutines, but rather to give newcomers a working knowledge of them and to show some of the more common coroutine uses. I think it might be useful first to cover a small amount of theory on how a coroutine differs from a method and how they could potentially be useful. So, to get started, a method, all instructions in a method must complete in a single frame. So if you have a method that takes 1 second to complete, your frame is not going to update. So you will have a frame rate of 1 FPS. Coroutines, in contrast, the logic within them can be run over a number of frames or delayed until a certain amount of time has elapsed. So you may be asked at this point, how is this useful? First, it allows for intensive operations to be run over a number of frames, thereby maintaining a reasonable frame rate. So returning back, this is an example. This is effectively what made me have to learn coroutines. In Vigilantes, when the AI characters are trying to decide what to do for their turn, they need to gather an awful lot of information and create orders from that. So that was extremely intensive, and it was just killing the frame rate. So that's why I started learning about coroutines. So going back to the example, say if we run that in a method, we want to get, say for example, we want to get 60 orders. Each order takes 1/60th of a second, so the total time is 1 second. So you get a frame rate of 1 FPS. So if you run that instead over 60 frames, getting 1 order per frame, your frame rate should be in and around the 60, or it will be much better at any rate. The second use of coroutines, they can be used to delay events for timing purposes, providing a cleaner, more versatile alternative to invoke. Now you may be familiar with invoke. It allows you to call a method on a delay. However, it does not allow you to pass a parameter. That can make it can basically lead for very kind of messy code to try and work around that. It can lead to declaring extra variables or extra fields and things like that. That's another thing you can do with coroutines. You can delay events. Third use of coroutines. It allows code, in particular things like timer countdowns, to be moved out of the update loop. So rather than checking if you want to count down a certain thing, count it down either in the update loop or call a method to count it down, you can just start the coroutine and that will take care of that. It can help you unclutter your update loop if there's a lot of things in it, and it is also apparently slightly more performant than calling things from the update loop. So taken together, these features of coroutines, they allow for a lot of extra functionality, and they also allow for the writing of tidier code. So that's why you should look at consider using coroutines in your code. Now to consider a couple of other things. Do you need coroutines to make a game? The answer is no. You don't need them, but depending on the type of game you might. For example, I made Deadstone without using any coroutines. However, when I started working on Vigilantes, it quickly became obvious that I would need to use coroutines or something similar to make the game work reasonably well at a decent frame rate. Now, to look at the disadvantages of coroutines, the path execution the execution path for the code will be truncated in any debug.log statements. So you may not have information on where the coroutine is called from. This will make debugging a little more complicated. You also should be a little cautious using them around destroying objects or transitioning between scenes, as an attempt may be made to call the coroutine whose script or object is no longer accessible. So it's just a small thing to keep into consideration. Overall, though, coroutines aren't intended as a replacement for methods. They're effectively another tool that you can use in a limited number of circumstances that their functionality is a benefit. So in the next couple of videos, I'll look at some of the more common use cases for coroutines, and I'll see you then.